Hello. Tonight's lesson is going to be using the area model to demonstrate understanding of multiplication. The first thing we need to remember is what the area formula is. Area equals length times width. So if we take the width of a rectangle and we multiply it by the length of the rectangle, we can find out what the entire square foot of this rectangle would be. That would be if this area was made up of a bunch of small squares that were broken into square centimeters, square inches, however you would do that. So we could count how many squares going across and then how many of these squares going down, and we would make an array with these squares that would tell us the total area of a rectangle. Well, we can also use the area of a rectangle as a way to demonstrate multiplication. Let's pretend like this rectangle is the concrete port of a house. And this house has 3 rooms. It has a really large room here, and then it has a small room here, and even a smaller room right there. Now let's say that the width of each of these rooms are going to be the same. They're going to have to be the same. So let's say that the width of the rooms are, 4. So that means this width is 4, this width is 4 as well, because we know opposite sides are equal in a rectangle. Now, the widths going across are going to be different. We can tell that because they're different sizes. So let's say this width right here going across is going to have a width of, I meant to hit the pen, of 200. And that the width of this one would have a width of 20. And then let's say this width up here is going to be the width of 3. So if we were to look at that number in standard form, we would have 200 plus 20 plus 3 would give us our total width, which would be 223 going all the way across. Of course, the whole width is only 4. It's not very good scale. But we're going to use this idea to show understanding by finding the area of each rectangle. So if we find the area of 204, we would know this whole area would have how many squares in it? Well, 2 times 4 is 8. Count our zeros. So this would have an area of 800. The next rectangle would have 2 times 4 again is 8, but we'd only have to count 1 0 here. So that would have an area of 80. And this rectangle would be 4 times 3, which is 12. Well, all we'd have to do is take our 800 plus our 80 plus our 12, add that up, and we would know what the entire area of our house is, which would be 892. Okay, let's practice some more. Before we get started, I want to talk to you about the word distributive property. It's another property of multiplication that we're going to learn. What the distributive property says is that if you take a number and you're going to multiply that number, 8, and we're going to multiply it times 302, you have to know about the place value. You have to know that 302 is broken up into 300 plus 2. And we can take that 300 and we're going to multiply that 8 times that 300. We're going to distribute it there. And then we're going to take that 2 and multiply that 8 times that 2. So basically we're going to have 2 problems. We're going to have 8 times 300 and then we're going to have 8 times 2. That's shown right here. And we're going to go ahead and fill this out. Now I want you to recognize this right here. You have 8 and it's sitting next to the parentheses. What happens in math is most of the time we do not use that X to show multiplication, especially in later grades. So a lot of times you're going to see a number just sitting next to brackets. When that happens, it means to automatically know that there's a multiplication sign there, that you're going to be multiplying 8 times everything in that bracket, which is what this right here is the same as this. Now, let's look at what we would put here. 8 times what would go here? Well, remember, we have to distribute that 8 times the 3. So we'd say 8 times 300. And what would be here? 8 times 2. Very good. And that is how we're going to get those answers. We're going to multiply our partial products like we've been doing, and we're going to recognize that we're going to be multiplying 8 times 300, and then we're going to add that to 8 times 2. Now, what would that look like on an area model? Well, we have our rectangle here, right? So let's label our width 8. So we'll say from here to here is 8. Doesn't matter whether you call it length or width. That's way beside the point. And then we're going to label our first big part of our rectangle, because it's broken up into 2 smaller groups. The first one is going to be 300. And the second one is going to be 2. Little bitty. Now, we're going to find the area of each of these rectangles. So the first area we can find is the area of this rectangle right here. We know that the length from here to here is 2. So from here has to be 8, because we know opposite sides of a rectangle are equal. So to find the area, what's the length times the width? Well, it's 2 times 8 equals 16. So the area of this rectangle is 16. It's a little small for me to write in there, so I'm going to write it down there. So now we have the next rectangle. Excuse my voice, guys. Now we have the next rectangle, which is a larger rectangle, and it's 8 times 300. So 8 times 3 is 24. Count our zeros, add them. It's 2,400. So now we know that if we want to add this rectangle up plus this rectangle up here, we know our total area. So 8 times 300 we said was 2,400, plus 8 times 2 we said was 16, our partial products. The answer is 2,416 as our area, using the distributive property. Basically, what an area model is it gives a picture to each of the partial products that we've drawn. It's partial products again, but just have the picture to match. Let's keep going. Let's do another. Okay, 216 times 5. As you do this problem, I want you to hit pause as you do each step. That way, as soon as you do the step, you can press play again and check to see if you have the answer correctly. So at this time right now, let's look at the very first step. The very first step is to write the number in expanded form. I want you to think, are you going to write 216 in expanded form? Are you going to write 5 in expanded form? Which one of these would help? Press pause now and write that number in expanded form. Okay, now our next step is for you to take those numbers that you wrote in expanded form and place those on the rectangles that you see up here. So here's a rectangle, here's a rectangle, and here's a rectangle. So I want you to place them on rectangle 1, 2, and 3, where you think they match. Press pause at this time and do that. Now, did you get 200 plus 10 plus 6 like I did? If you did, good job. Our next step is to place the 1-digit number as the width. Press pause, do that, and then come back to me. I'm sure you got this one right. It's 5. Our next step is going to be to find the area of each smaller rectangle. So we need to find the area of rectangle 1, rectangle 2, and rectangle 3. Remember, area equals length times width. Go ahead and do that at this time. After you press pause and you complete that, press play again. Did you find that rectangle number 1 was 1,000, and rectangle number 2 was 50, and rectangle number 3 as 30? I hope so. So now we're ready for our very last step. And our very last step is to add all the areas together to get the total area of this rectangle. So if we were to take rectangle 1, 2, and 3, add all of them up, it'll tell us our total rectangle of the entire thing. Do that at this time. You should have said 1,000 plus 50 plus 30. It's a pretty easy adding here. Our answer is 1080. Now, let's take a moment and let's look at our equations that we have here. Sorry about that, guys. Seems to be a problem of mine. Right here. Now, the number in the brackets is our number written in expanded form. So we're going to take 216 and write it in an expanded form inside the brackets here. So let's do it. We have 210 plus 6. That is our number in expanded form. And that says 5 times, remember, 200, and then 5 times 10, and then 5 times 6. Now, each of these brackets below are going to represent rectangle 1, rectangle 2, and rectangle 3. And we're going to each represent the width times the length in each of these rectangles. So let's go ahead and see if you can fill that in on your own. Once you're done, press play again. Okay, hopefully you said 5 times 200 here, and you said 5 times 10 here, and you said 5 times 6 here. If that was the case, then you did that totally correct. Let's practice one more. Okay, remember our steps. I want you to press pause at this time. I want you to do this one 100% on your own, and then press play again to see how it works and to get the right answer. Okay, there's a lot to look at this page. Right now, I just want you to take a second and look at all of the numbers that I have up and compare them to the numbers that you have. And then I'm going to explain to you. Alright, the first thing I did was I wrote my numbers in expanded form. And I took the number 593 and I expanded it to 500 plus 90 plus 3. That's where I did that right there. The second thing I did was I placed these values in the rectangle. If you look right up here, you can see where I placed 593 on the rectangle. Then I took my 1 digit, which was 9, and I placed that as the width of my rectangle. So, if you can see that, I did that right there as well. So, then I went ahead, just so you could see what I was doing, and I labeled rectangle 1. This whole rectangle was rectangle 1. This is rectangle 2, and this is rectangle 3. Now, the next step was to find the areas of those rectangles, which is what I did right here. I said 9 times 5 was 4,500. I said 9 times 90 was 810. And I said 9 times 3 was 27. Now, this part right here represented rectangle number 1. This represented rectangle number 2. And this one represented rectangle number 3. So I can easily show you the area of each of these rectangles inside. Now, my final thing to do is to add all the areas together to get my total. So if I add my areas together, which is 4,500, 810, and 27, that would equal 5,337, which is what 593 times 9 equals. Now you're going to complete the rest of your homework. You can refer to this video anytime you need to. I think you're going to really enjoy this. I really enjoy it. It's a great way to review area, and it gives you a picture to represent big number multiplication. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope that you learned a lot. I hope you do really well on your homework tonight. Have fun.